we're going to discuss Neon Maniacs. A bunch of teenagers who seem to be stalked, or they come across all these different, I guess maniacs, if you want to call them that, but they are kind of hybrids between slasher-type characters and monster-type characters who appear to live in a tower in the Golden Gate Bridge. A bridge I'm not very familiar with because I'm not from the US, but I've seen it in plenty of shows and movies, and they seem to only come out at night, and they don't enjoy water. In terms of plot, that's really all it is about. They don't really give you too much insight as to why these things are afraid of water. We really get no backstory on any of the characters. There's very little explained in the actual movie itself, but for me, it's quite an enjoyable movie. I actually blind bought it on Blu-ray. It looked interesting. It's a very 80s low-budget type movie. Kind of enjoyable just in itself of that cheesy nature that it has there. And, you know, I'm quite partial towards slasher movies in general. I think it's a movie that definitely has its share of problems. We've heard about how it's got all these kind of production issues. I did listen to an interview with, I think, the guy that did the effects on the movie, and he was talking about how they had a lot of issue with being able to pay people, and certain people weren't getting paid on time, and even a cameraman took a piece of a camera with him home because he hadn't been paid, so they couldn't keep shooting one night. Little things like that. What are your general thoughts on this movie?
So I didn't really know much about this movie before going into it. I knew some friends who had seen it before, and they, lukewarm opinions. I just sort of went into this not knowing what to expect. It came out really enjoyable, really fun movie. They had some definite issues with it. Like you said, there's no backstory given, and there's somewhat of a lack of story. At the same time, though, just from the sheer enjoyment, the characters involved, I thought there's a lot going on in this movie, and I thought the movie had quite a lot to give you if you're interested in sort of the more 80s cheesy horror. One thing I really appreciated about this movie is that despite the somewhat ludicrous plot, it was, for the most part, played in a somewhat serious manner. There were some humorous scenes, but this definitely wasn't, a comedy horror. It's not like it's Night of the Creeps. So I thought the movie was really enjoyable, and despite the problems, and there were some definite issues, this is a movie I would easily see myself buying and easily see myself watching multiple times again.
Yeah, you get some decent practical effects. It has its share of gooey moments as well. One thing I wanted to kind of highlight with the movie was the music. It's got this like really weird, funky elevator type music that I guess that's what you would call the theme music, because it plays, I believe, at the beginning and at the end. It was just really, really unusual. Very unique to it. I guess it's a plus because it just makes it stand out more from the crowd of other similar type movies.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if you've seen the movie, there's quite a lengthy Battle of the Bands scene. like a 15, it's basically like a demo for a CD, and the music is, it's 80s, so if it's your type of thing, you might enjoy it. Be honest, I actually enjoyed quite a bit of it, but at the same time, it really adds a lot of, topical flavor to the movie. They easily could not have had the music, but they threw it in anyway, and some people may not like it, but I sort of enjoyed how they did that.
Yeah, I'm guessing that it went so long because they needed to pad the movie's runtime. I'm pretty sure it's a 80-something minute movie.
Yeah, and like we said, there's not a whole lot of necessarily heavy plot points in the movie. Just different characters running into these creatures and trying to find out exactly what they are. And we never actually find out. We don't find out a thing about them, which is my biggest pet peeve. But luckily, since everything else is so enjoyable, I actually, for once, didn't care that much.
Yeah. And I think because we don't get a whole lot of plot or backstory on the characters, whenever I watch this movie, I always think that this is like a fairly good candidate for a remake. If someone was looking to find something that had some promise and kind of do it all over again, even though it's got, some hardcore fans out there, they're few and far between, so you're not really going to piss off a lot of people by remaking it.
Yeah, basically just me, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely a fun idea. You've got all these different, the majority of them are like slasher type characters, I guess you could say. There's a few that are kind of more monsterish, but I guess back in the day, if you're in the 80s and you're watching this and you're thinking, geez, what would it be like if we had a movie where you had, Michael Myers from Halloween and Jason from Friday the 13th and all these different characters come together, but they've kind of done this, but with, like, no-name characters.
Yeah, it seemed to me that some guy just pulled out a bunch of old action figures. Hey, let's just throw this in the movie,
Yeah.
It just seemed like a strange mishmash of antagonists.
Yeah. And speaking about the Maniacs in the movie, were there any particular ones that stood out to you, or any that you thought were really stupid?
I think my least favorite one would probably be I forget if it's like a caveman or an ape. It's something very simplistic like that.
I believe he's called Ape or Ape Man, one of the two. Like in the actual credits, they have all the names, and he's kind of my least favorite one too.
Because it's just visually not that striking, in my opinion.
And I also think visually he's the most different from all of them. Like, all the other ones are kind of dark in their own way, and this guy, he doesn't look like he belongs with all the other ones.
Another one, and this one might be somewhat controversial. I was not a big fan of the samurai. I don't know, it didn't feel... I mean, I'm not sure what they were aiming for, but I just didn't necessarily care much for that design.
Oh, really? I think he was actually my favorite.
Well, I was going to say, I suspect it's probably a lot of people's favorites. My favorite would probably be the one with the nooses, just because I really liked the just unsuspecting victim getting hung up. I thought that was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, well, there's quite a few interesting ones in there. The unusual part to the movie, I think, is when they start introducing more and more characters, kind of like in the second half of the movie. They kind of just jump in out of nowhere, like the soldier guy.
They introduce these characters without really introducing the other ones, so,
So they've got a few of the main ones who are just kind of always there throughout the movie. Then they've got a whole bunch that they throw in at the end. So there's one guy just comes in, the soldier guy comes in, shoots everything, and you've got the doctor character played by Andrew Divoff, who people may or may not be aware is the guy that played Wishmaster, which is a movie we'll be discussing later. And you can't really tell that it's him because of how young he is and all the makeup that he's wearing and his costume and all that.
Out of interest, I have a question for you. What do you think the origin behind these things is?
Jeez.
I know.
To be honest, I don't even dare to tackle it. There's just way too many possibilities.
Yeah, it was so off the wall. I'm just assuming there's some extra dimensional type thing, but like we said, the movie gives literally no explanation, doesn't even give a possible explanation.
Yeah. And I also think the ending is a little abrupt. I guess there's no real... I can't think of a better way to end it, but at the same time, it's one of those endings where once it fades to black and the credits come up, you're thinking, that's it. You feel like there should be something a little more at the end.
I agree with you to a point. It seemed like it was somewhat anticlimactic after the Battle of the Bands sequence, the authorities go to the hideout and try to find out, if these things actually exist. But I thought I know the final scene with the three main characters driving away, it's a drizzly night, and the characters think, well, I mean, it's done for now, but they'll probably be back. I thought they had a nice sort of downbeat ending that I would have expected from a movie called Neon Maniacs.
Yeah. And actually, that interview that I watched with the guy that did the effects, he said that the movie itself was nobody's pet project, so no one really had a care about, providing answers for anything that happens or any backstory. So essentially it was a movie that was purely made to make money, because horror movies, I guess, you can make them for very cheap. They just bought a very cheap script and did whatever they could with it.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm surprised they had a script, but if you have a thing for 80s movies, I mean, what's the downside? Most you waste an hour and a half of your life, but, there might be enough in this movie to enjoy, at least mildly enjoy, so I would say it's probably worth seeing. Because there's actually some really cool things in this movie. There's a pool sequence that I thought was somewhat innovative.
Yeah, too bad it's with the ape guy, the least exciting character.
That is true.
Yeah. One other thing I did want to say is that, not that this is much of a spoiler, but at some point in the movie, they've got all these squirt guns, water guns. What a ridiculous idea. I mean, what are they thinking? We're going to just squirt a little bit of water on them, and they're going to completely melt, and not even tell the people in the crowd what they're actually for.
I thought that was, once everything got out of control, these all these people screaming, and it's just like this one guy, hey, use the water guns. Like, nobody's listening to that guy.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I thought the whole scene was really enjoyable. It was so ridiculous, but everybody was taking it so seriously.
Yeah.
And my favorite actress is over there using the fire hose just to. I mean, she was a badass in this movie.
I struggle back and forth to give this an exact rating out of 10, but for now, I'm sticking with a 7 out of 10. I find it to be quite an enjoyable movie, but it's clearly got its flaws, especially with its backstory, which we would have liked to see more on. So I'm going to stick with a 7. I want to give it an 8, but I just can't get there.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed this a lot more than I ever would have expected. It was, to me, it was a legitimately enjoyable movie. Once I started it, it's not something that I could just put down. So I give this actually a rather high rating, 8.5 out of 10, or if you would prefer a rounded number, probably around a 9 out of 10. So there are some definite problems with it, but I enjoyed it quite a bit.